We'll call the meeting to order of the work session. You'll notice we have 2 items on the agenda since we do not have a July work session. We're doubling up here. Thank you, Dr. Abel. Oh, and two board members are unable to attend today, so we're down to 3.
It's good. Quorum is good. Good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This afternoon, we're just going to spend a little bit of time kind of on our year-end progress update of our district priorities. As you recall, last year, we started with this document and said this is a fluid living document, and so every year we'll review what we've done, and then that guides us to what we need to either continue doing for the next year, or if we want to make some adjustments based on progress, based on things that emerge during the course of the year. So that's really what we're going to kind of do, is look future focused as we do this final review. After we have all of our achievement data and the indicators that are in the latter part of that document, we'll be giving the board an additional update on that too. This is mainly with the priority work and the indicators that are in the bulk of the document. Some of that data for the achievement data is still being finalized and cleaned up and doing what we do to make sure all of it is accurate. So we'll present that like we usually do. But that is not today. So that's what we're going to focus on. So as people come up and go through kind of their sections of the document, we're not going to go through all of the details from this year. We're mainly going to provide an update for anything that's changed since our mid-year update in January, and then just make sure that the board is aware of what those priority areas will either continue to be or what they're going to change to, or what we're going to emphasize a little bit more heading into next year. Then what we'll do is we'll revise the master document. We'll repost that. We'll have some hard copies made that'll also have that updated achievement data in it, and then we'll have that posted for use over the coming school year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Boyson to begin with our academic success area, and then we'll progress through. And then we'll spend a little bit of concentrated time on the facilities portion with Jeff Kreider and thinking ahead for that specific area after we get through this. So,
good afternoon. I'm here to give an update of our academic success and where we're headed for next year. So the initiatives for academic success last year were implement the MTSS structure, embed college and career readiness throughout our coursework, and really target professional learning and how do we help support that. And through each one of these, we set proven practices, we set goals in each one of those areas, college and career readiness, and targeted professional development. And we gave updates on all of those indicators in December. And we're going to continue on, and I'll give those new initiatives in those areas. This is our current plan as it sits. So those progress indicators, again, were updated on December 1st. And when we look at the very first initiative, it was the implementation of MTSS. And we added for next year PBIS, which is that positive behavior support systems throughout the buildings. In the graphic off to the side, that light blue ring, those are our district priority areas. The next ring is the MTSS, essential understandings, and then the Plan, Do, Study, Act. So that whole problem-solving model that we use in everything we do to help support MTSS, PBIS, and then the district priorities.
And can I interrupt right there? I believe we just had, as a district, the building leadership, their first training this last week, maybe, and Dr. Fedden, I thought I saw her.
Yep, she's over here.
She's hiding behind that Todd there. Led it, and I heard several compliments from principals on that. So thank you, Dr. Fedden.
We did. We had our, on that Friday, a week ago Friday, we had the MTSS. Every building had a team there and went through that training. Dr. Fedden led it. Great training. Next steps in that process. And then last Monday and Tuesday, we had building level teams for the beginning of the PBIS. So it was great learning and training for all our staff and their teams. So as we look forward to second year with MTSS implementation, we're again continuing to train those building level teams on the decision rules and the problem-solving process. And so what's our next step when we bring the problem to the table with our group? How do we work through that, and what are our decision rules? We're looking at data literacy and what data is important, and ITS is working on some great dashboards for us. So if I want to look at attendance, behavior, academics, it pulls all that information together for me as a problem-solving team to look at that. And then a balanced assessment system throughout the district so we can look at all third grade reading scores on a dashboard or math or any of the intervention supports to see how that's moving the needle for students. And then we bring in PBIS team training. And again, spoke to that just a minute ago, where we did our first initial trainings last Monday and Tuesday with our building level teams. So really developing that common understanding of what PBIS is and what that looks like in our buildings. And then what's our process and our language for that. So we set out that timeline for that training. Building teams will have 7 trainings throughout the year. And then really we have some support built in with our trainer that's come in, and then our implementation leaders as well. And then SWIS is a data system that we will track the behaviors and the impact that PBIS will have with that. And that will be a K through 8 initiative. And the next one is targeted professional development. New initiatives is we want to make that professional development visible for all employee groups. So they can look and say, I'm a clerical, so I had training in August 4th on this, and then when are their next trainings? I'm a teacher, I'm a custodian, I'm an educational assistant, a behavior facilitator, and really looking at what that training support looks like. And so we'll make that visible for all employee groups. And then expansion of professional learning. We piloted the micro-credentials this year, so we have 40 teachers that are taking part in that micro-credential. It's a 3-credit class. They have until the end of September to finish that. We've collected some feedback on that very first part of it. We have some that are done already, some are right in the middle, and some are just getting started. And so we'll continue to gauge that feedback and see if that's the right path, or what other offerings can we have in that arena. And then professional learning advisory team. How do we get teachers to the table when we're planning Inspire Conference to look at what we're offering and what they're asking for? And so to have a conversation around that too. And then college and career readiness. We've hired a K-12 career counselor, and that K-12 career counselor will work very closely with Patty Lake Torbert, but then working with all grade levels on how do we help career exposure and then develop those pathways that lead into our courses at the high school level. Agriculture education at CTE, that's alive, and they're working hard on that curriculum, getting ready to get that course off. Natural resources is our first course. And so Andrew, our new CTE teacher, he's been out there and working very closely to get that started. Computer science, bringing that group back together and industry professionals to say what are our high interest courses and how does that align to industry, and really looking at, we know we have to change what we're doing, so how can we do it to align with that, and the universities. And then JAG. We'll have JAG at all 4 high schools next year, so that's an expansion, and great things from the kids that have gone through JAG this year. And then JROTC, Air Force at Roosevelt. But we have someone hired, so that's a go for next year. So we're excited as that gets underway. I think they have 22 kids interested. And then Spanish Immersion Pathway for 2025. So that's that process of where will those kids go to middle school when they all hit 6th grade in 2025. And those are the areas for, oh, I guess I have more. Sorry, I'm not done yet. The pyramid model for implementation at early childhood. That's the MTSS model for early childhood. And then SPED Advantage, full implementation. Dr. Fedden and her team are taking through that. And then they've also looked at Behavior Advantage, which really helps develop plans when we're putting implementation plans for students together as a support system. The Fine Arts Curriculum Study, we'll start that this fall with a steering committee. World Language and English Language Development Study will be in its second year, so we'll bring a proposal to you in March for curriculum adoption. And the same thing with science. We're in that year 2 of that study. And then Gifted Learner Study. What's our gifted learner delivery? You know, when we look at in the traditional school, and then challenge center model, and then identification of students too. So really looking at that model, is it a whole school model? Just to begin a study and to look at that, have the discussion. And then the LMS or learning management systems, we have 4 unique platforms that are used at all, from K-12. So which platform best supports all of our students? And then looking at an assessment platform there also, because they have to align. And then that assessment continuum, K-12. Again, where can I see my data for all my 3rd graders, all my 4th graders, all my 8th graders, my high school students? And those are the areas for academic success. Questions? Okay, thank you.
I'll just interject here while Jamie's getting ready to do the next section. There are so many foundational pieces in that area alone for how we are reducing some variability and bringing a continuity factor to our academic picture. And so the work that's just happened this year is pretty incredible. And hats off to Dr. Boyson and her team, because there have been a lot of things put in motion this year that we know will make a difference and that make it easier for us to look across our entire district to really diagnose where we need to shore things up or where things are really working well. And so I really appreciate their work, and that we knew was a kind of a multi-year picture for those big, large initiatives, but a really good start to that this year.
Good afternoon. We'll follow now with the area of the well-being. And in the area of well-being, as you can see, a lot of that deals with the staff and student well-being and that sense of belonging that we have and the supports that we need there to be in place for all our students and our staff. And so when we go through this, part of the initiatives for the well-being were areas in the, first of all, MTSS, and you're going to hear that being consistent through a majority of the areas that we talk about today, but that has been a focus over this past year and will be for the next 2 to 3 more years ongoing. The second area in there was really the supports for the families, our staff, and our students, and I'll talk about that a little bit later coming up here as we go through some of the initiatives that'll carry into next year. The third area in there is review and the alignment of the supports for the Joe Foss programs, the Bridges program, and now that third phase of it, which is going to be the middle school and high school programs at Axtell Park. And there'll be a board report on that this evening, so you'll hear a lot more about that this evening. And the fourth area is really that targeted professional development and the equipping our staff to be able to support the needs of our students. And so we'll talk about that, and many of the things Dr. Boyson had touched on are relevant in this area of well-being as well, so it carries over into a multitude of areas. First of all, that MTSS area, we've talked quite a bit on this. We did have a board report or a work session on December 1st where we went through the whole area of well-being. And so you heard quite a bit about the MTSS process. I'll touch on a few more of those highlights coming up because there's a few added things that we have that we will work on for this next year. Big thing being on there, a common document that we use throughout the entire district and some of that training. The second area here is the family supports, and a lot of those family supports that we look at, we specifically talked about the supports being offered for our students. And the website, if you go to that website now, that's been updated, and there's a category on there where you can go for families, student and family support, and go down to the counseling services. And in those counseling services, all the different areas that they wanted to be able to have access to, we have it at one location now. So whether that be with the helpline or suicide prevention, any type of a guidance we have for the parents or quit lines, contacts or ways to contact the individual school counselors, let alone community organizations. So that has been updated and that information is in there as well. Our student, our Partners for Success that we have in there as well. I'll talk about some of this update in here, but really that support for our Native American population and our Family Engagement Center. Those are two of the key figures that we have going on there as well with our professional development. I'll talk about some of those updates that we will have going forward for the 22-23 school year. And then the professional development. And that has been ongoing and extensive. We have tremendously utilized the COVID dollars or the ESSER dollars for that to be able to offer a lot more in professional development through the start of this year and over the last year and will for the next year upcoming. So first of all, those progress indicators that we have and we talk about there, those indicators, the MTSS process, we do have these updates for you. So first of all, a full report was given on December 1st, but the updates that I wanted to give to you, first of all, is continue the implementation of the MTSS process. So we've worked with Doug and Nicole have brought forward a dashboard that our student assistance teams will be utilizing, and they've worked with each of the levels, elementary, middle, and high school, and Dr. Boyson has worked with them as well as Dr. Fedden. And we created this document that they can utilize. It'll implement all those or input all those pieces of data they will use, test scores, different needs that the student may have, attendance, behavior reports, and be able to utilize those. And it really is going to help them to have a consistent format and then a common document that we use. So when a child moves from the elementary, middle, and high school, we don't have to recreate a lot of those things. We can really look at what has worked in the elementary, what's worked in the middle school, and continue to utilize that all the way through. So those are some of the things. We'll continue this on as a 2 to 4 year process with that training. Obviously, we just concluded the June 3rd training, which Dr. Fedden had led our group through. And every school had 8 individuals there, and it was a great turnout and really a very productive set of meetings that we had that day. The implementation there of the access supports for the families, I talked about that a little bit, but truly when you look at our engagement center, and through that first year, we did a lot of learning. We're going to utilize some of the homeless dollars as well to add a social worker that'll work directly out of there. And we'll be able to utilize that for the next 2 years as we use some of those dollars to provide that service there to do even a greater sense of outreach to families. We've combined 2 different services in one location so families become very comfortable to use it and utilize those resources that are there, really with our EL intake and talking even some expansion of services there, and then our homeless to be able to provide all the things that would be needed there for families. Whether that be clothing, hygiene needs, or other services that they can tap into within our community. But those can all be found there. And looking at that intensive supports to meet the unique needs of all students, we'll talk about that in the upcoming board report tonight. But really, we've looked through different various groups within our school system, whether that be Joe Foss, and did a lot of updates there, the Bridges program. But we'll talk about the Axtell Park one later on tonight, so I won't steal that thunder at this time. And then the targeted professional development for our staff. When you go through just in the last few weeks here with the PBIS training and to be able to have that common language and training for the entire district, the MTSS training that we have ongoing and will continue into next year. The Kagan training is another way on that, because if we can keep our students engaged and active in the classroom, the likelihood of the behaviors or other things coming out is less likely. And that's where I think there's a lot of feedback where Dr. Boyson led that group through that training, and just the feedback that we heard from staff of how productive that was. It's not easy to have staff come in, be excited in the start of the summer for additional training, but I think it was very productive. The PSYOP training, and then we'll also have some very individualized training like at Axtell Park for their staff there to be able to help with the behavioral needs of some students that we have at those locations. The next part on there is really that K-12 career counselor, and we believe that's going to help in that well-being area as well as we go through and students can see some of the purpose of why they're taking their education and what can be gained from that, and be able to see what job opportunities they may have. So when they go into the high school, we can better utilize the CTE Academy or internships or some of the programs and partnerships we have with programs like Avera and the Sanford and many others that are coming on board with that. So that's hopefully some of that work, the K-12 counselor, that's something that we're working for this next year and was approved through the potential board or budget process. And then the implementation of the mental health supports. Part of that's going to be at the Axtell Park program. Again, we'll talk about that tonight. Our staff training on that, we did at the beginning of this last year. We had professional development for the staff, but then for our staff specifically, truly that Sand Creek process, and that's been pushed out in multiple messages to staff, and Becky Dorman and her team continually puts that out there. So staff become very comfortable and knowledgeable of where they can go to get their supports if they do need access to those things. So those are the things that we're currently working on and our priority recommendations that we're utilizing, and many of the things in the well-being are going to exist over a few years. And so that is the update in the area of well-being.
Questions for Dr. Noel? Thank you.
Click the next slide so they know who's up next. Thank you. Oh, that's me. This, as you know, has been an area that we've worked hard on this year with some of the activities that board members have been part of. We know that our community partnerships are important, and part of that kicked off in January with our partnership breakfast. And then we wanted to do some formal listening experiences while we also kind of focus on that big picture of just what does communication look like overall in our district. And so one of the big pieces also that came into play this year was our new website. And that has served as a really good foundation for improving a lot of the ways that we communicate with our broader community of families and students. So, like I said, the partnership breakfast was held in January. We'll build off that each year. This next year, we'll hope that we don't have an ice storm on that morning, but we still had a good turnout. We had our community forums that were held both first and second semester with our 5 groups. We kicked off Crowd Loop. We have our district feedback plan that now we have set up and ready to go, and that's all the different ways that we get feedback from students, from parents, from staff, and then with Crowd Loop, kind of some innovative ways that we're trying to look at new things that we do. The Remind app is one that we are still looking at, but one of the things that our new website does is gives us the ability to communicate a little bit differently through that mobile app. And so we're looking at what's the capacity there and what does it take to get everything under one platform. As you know, we added our coordinator for after-school programming and community partnerships with Rebecca Wimmer, and that's gone very well. We've established a number of new partnerships as well as gotten kind of a quantum leap for what we're doing with our after-school programming itself. So looking ahead, we are really going to be working hard on building out that community learning center model, looking at what's happening in all of our schools, and then looking at where do we begin putting resources in first as we look at kind of that whole picture of a quality program. And then aligning those community resources, all those partners that we already have that may be providing programming or a component of programming, starting with Volunteers of America and moving them on site and kind of looking at that partnership differently. And then expanding opportunities for our students. What can they do for interest-based enrichment opportunities? We have a lot of things happening already, but we think we can put that under a better kind of framework with our after-school community learning center model. And then with that also comes adult literacy, the components that we want to put in for parent education, and looking at how we can foster all of that together in a coordinated way. So as I've told each of you, we'll kind of have a dashboard approach to that, looking at those program quality indicators. So we'll pretty much leave the existing language in the district priorities document, but we are going to emphasize with all of our schools that continual cultivation of engagement with our families. One of the things that we did was we asked parents this spring, what did we bring back this year that was really important to you? What are you still missing? How are you engaging with other families? And I think a lot of times school districts think about communication as kind of, we put the information out there, you do something, or it tells you what you need to do, and then we do the next round of that. And we've really tried to rethink that to being two-way, and not only connecting people with schools, but connecting people with other people. And one of the strands that was really loud and clear with the feedback that we got is parents want to be connected with other parents and families. They want to know who their children are playing with in their neighborhood. They miss some of the gatherings that we used to do that brought people in for those fun events or for knowing how to support their child as a learner. That also lines up well with what we heard during our community forums, our World Cafes, that parents, no matter if they speak English or not, want to be able to support their children. And so we're looking at how we can really continue to cultivate that well this next year. I think when we look at some of the dents from our COVID year, that's one of the things that we're going to continue to feel the ripples unless we're really intentional about cultivating that. And I think, you know, we know from some of the recent headlines, it's never been more important to know each other, to know each other's kids, to have a good, strong relationship base in our schools so that schools continue to be a place that are valued in our community and where people can gather and really support learning in our community. So those are the updates for community engagement. Questions or feedback that you'd like to give around that area?
No, and it's just so welcoming that we're able to do this again, and we're really thankful that families are starting to come back and want to do this, because it's hard once you stop to get them to come back in. But I think that's the best thing that's happened this year, is being able to have those relationships with the families again in our schools.
Yeah. And, you know, we talked about what's the experience of a family who maybe started right in the middle of COVID, you know, who didn't know what that looked like before in a prior year. And so we have to make sure that we give them a great experience as well. Okay, we'll turn it over to staff excellence.
Good afternoon. All right. As I look at our staff excellence, I summarize staff excellence as recruiting and retaining our great staff, giving them professional development, and then listening to their voice as they collaborate with us to make our district better. So I think you'll see a lot of that and a lot of those activities around that. As we look through, just a reminder of our progress indicators, what we were working toward this year, increasing our retention rates of all groups, focusing on hard to fill, using that feedback, recruiting diverse employees that represent our student groups, and then hearing their voice, hearing our staff's voice in the light bulb learning submissions. This year, we conducted a market study. We looked at both classified and teaching staff to make sure that we were competitive with our wages and to support our staff retention rates. We implemented the Cheers for Peers program, which gave 30 education assistants across our district an opportunity to step up into a leadership role and to be a peer to new EAs coming into their buildings that maybe started after the beginning of the school year and didn't get in on all the back to school things. So we had over 60 EAs that received mentoring from their peers. So it's an exciting program that we are looking to continue. And then mid-year, HR deployed surveys to our new teachers to find out what their onboarding experience looked like in the district. And then we are using their feedback to shape our efforts for fall. Dr. Boyson and I pulled together a group just this May to dive just a little bit deeper into those survey results and to find out for both of our departments what we can put in place for next year based on our teachers' feedback. So that was a really productive session. And then also the teacher voice was definitely heard when we were determining snow days versus online learning days, and we did that through an electronic survey. We implemented our Better Together initiative, again, hearing our staff's voice, and the standout idea, the Unconference, will be unveiled in August at our Inspire Education Conference. Moving forward for next year, we're going to collaborate with our custodians to take a look at a sign-on bonus program, as we're still working to maintain our custodial staff, to recruit and retain our custodial staff. We have a custodial supervisor that's going to come on board, and we see that as pivotal in helping to support our new custodians and our custodians that are transferring to new roles in the district. This is a continuing process, always examining our recruitment and staffing strategies as the hiring climate continues to change. And the micro-credentialing program will be launched for our certified staff. Are there any questions? Thank you.
I mean, I will say, I think all the efforts that we've made, Becky, all the efforts that we've made this past year, I think just goes to show how we are listening to all of our groups and trying to be market competitive within our area and even our surrounding states. So I just appreciate all the work that you all have put into that this year.
So effective use of resources, just a quick update on that. I should just back up just a little bit here. We want to analyze future facility needs to accommodate growth. We wanted to evaluate an impact of transportation on student success and engagement. We want to enhance child nutrition, the child nutrition program, and we want to advance fiscal responsibility. I'll get it. So our progress indicators are increased participation in after-school programs and middle level extracurriculars. That didn't, because of the busing issues, we weren't able to implement that this year, but we'll carry that over. Increase attendance in identified areas with the need-based transportation options. We had 3 pilots, one that kind of was a pilot and became a permanent one that has to do with SBA. I showed you in January the extraordinary results. It was pre-pandemic what these kids had and we'll just flip back to that slide here in a second, but versus when there was busing and there wasn't busing. We added a pilot program over at Terry Redland, and we did one at Patrick Henry. Now, the results of those, the attendance was actually down, but it was kind of consistent with other attendance in the district. It's pandemic related, so we've decided to carry those on for another year and see if we can get the attendance up from this year, is what we're doing with that. So this is what we looked at last time. Lunch participation rates. You know, last year it was all kids could eat lunch and breakfast for free, and this year they could as well. Now next year that won't be the case, but so you're comparing apples to apples. So and that's it was actually not quite the fairest comparison because this year the supply chain was a lot tougher than it was last year. But our school lunch is up 47%, the participation rate, and school breakfast up 89%. So that was really impressive. And then our property tax rank at 10th of 11th in 2021. I think 2022, I think we're third we're third to the lowest in our neighboring districts.
And you want the low.
Yeah, you want it to be lower. Yeah,
you want to be one in this.
So that's what, right.
Just to explain to the public. But
yeah.
How it's ranked.
So we're definitely in the bottom third of that category. Recommendations for next year. We're going to work with community partners to enhance after-school options at all levels. And I think that has been discussed earlier with our new position. So we just got to find the space for those kids from our perspective and in this area anyway. Determine future new site for expanding community campus program. As you know from reports over the last year or maybe even two, they're growing that program. They're bringing some of those kids back into the district rather than out of district placement. So we got to find a new site for them. So we need to figure that out in the next year before our lease expires. Transportation, we're implementing a GPS system and an app system so parents can go online and see where their bus is at and where their kid's at. That's going to get phased in over this year. So we expect that to be a great improvement over when a bus is running late. The SBI has to call the school, the principal has to type up a message, find out, get the right bus number and pull up the right kids off that bus number. Should be automatic. Now, I'm crossing my fingers on that because nothing's ever as easy as it sounds. But we expect to implement that over the first half of the year coming up. Child nutrition, the EAs were always kind of tied to the building, and now they're tied to the, if they're paid with the school lunch program money, they're tied to that. So they're going to bring them into their professional development, and they're going to treat them customer service skills and whatnot, like you get it kind of when you go to a restaurant versus not that. And then you're going to use the staff dietitians as resources for families in nutritional education. So it's not just at school, but throughout the rest of the day for the kids. And then financial responsibility. No one's ever interested in this but me and maybe the board is try to get our priority expenditures within our 5-year budget. We try to take that thing seriously. We try to look for efficiencies we can make, and we've developed this year a budget advisory group, which is supposed to go through every budget and come with recommendations out of every budget to make those efficiency cuts. So if we don't get them from the budget committees, this group has looked through their budget and we'll be able to make some recommendations to the board and kind of see it with, looking at the whole district rather than, I'm working on 1 or 2 or 3 budgets, and Jeff is working on 1 budget, and Jamie is working on 1 budget. And so this group is looking at them all, so they can bring in some proposed efficiencies that an individual committee working on 1 or 2 budgets might not find. So I think that is it for me. Questions?
Yeah.
I'm excited for the app. I think that I've got other friends in other communities that have had that kind of technology for a few years now, and I think it'll set a lot of parents' minds at peace. I think if they just can follow the bus and know when it's coming and when it's dropping off, and that's probably one of the things I know you're excited about the financial priorities, but I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, we had a lot of buses ran late last year, and it would have been helpful if that had been in place and working perfectly. And so hopefully by the end of this year, it'll be in place and working perfectly.
Well, and I think it was not maybe publicly known how much work the district did work with SBI to work on the issues of shortage of bus drivers and et cetera, and maybe rerouting and doing all that throughout the year to hopefully get to a better solution. And hopefully when we start the year this fall, some of those hiccups will have been taken care of. There's always going to be hiccups in our bus routes, but we'll always try to do better at what we can with the public.
Yeah, it will be an ongoing challenge, but we hope we're headed in the right direction. I hope all of these things reflect to the board and to our community that we are undertaking significant amounts of work. And Deanne, if you want to come up and load Jeff's slides while we reflect on this just for a minute. But what we're trying to do is look at all of the layers that we are accountable for in our school district, which is our students first, the staff who serve them, and the resources that undergird everything that we do. And I know as we finish up year 2, for one, it's hard to believe that 2 years have come and gone so quickly for me. But, COVID leaves ripples. And I think one of the things we have to remember is some of what we have in our priorities is reflective of best practice and what we would do no matter what. But many of those things also reflect what we sometimes refer to as kind of the dents from COVID, that we don't know how long we're going to feel those effects, and we still have some real real challenges that are things that we have to attend to. We were just discussing this morning attendance, and attendance is kind of woven throughout here with the things that we're trying to do to support our students. But, you know, there is still some big challenges related to that, and we know part of that is COVID. So anyway, I think we feel good about the work that's been done. It's been fun to see our teams of people get in for the training this year, and it's fun to use our learning lab space. We don't know what we did without that now that we use it so heavily, and we can have, what, 400 people or so out there this last week training at one time. Yeah, we wouldn't have been able to do that here. And, you know, sometimes our schools work for that, but to have dedicated space where we don't have to disrupt or have kids that are coming and going with summer activities and those things has been really helpful. So with that, we know that part of our priorities that deal with good stewardship and our physical resources, our facilities, the land use, will have some things that will need to go in front of the board over the course of this next year for some decision makings as we continue to move forward. So we wanted to spend just a little bit of concentrated time with Jeff, kind of just providing an overview of that, and then the board will need to determine kind of what the timeline will be and how you're going to want to undertake the work heading into this next year. So we'll just have a recap and kind of a little bit of projection forward for Mr. Kreider.
Okay, well, thank you. Hope I keep my voice, kind of goes in and out here today. But today, we're gonna kind of go over the overall CIP plan, the status of all the projects, cost summary to date, future approved CIP projects, land availability, you know, what we have in the works, and potential CIP projects. And there might be a capital project there as well. So I'll go through the first part. You've probably seen a lot of these. The status of all these projects, I think we have about 10 that are complete. So those are the somewhat completed. I'll kind of give you a status of each one of those. They're not all complete, but most of them are. Jefferson, I won't go through every one unless you want me to see all the aspects. Most people know what they are. But this project is basically complete. We still are working on punch lists and warranty items that remain. We're about 6.6 million under budget from what we projected. And that includes a reimbursement from the Journey Group for their portion of the road, Southeast Tech. And we're able to collect 46,000, just almost 47,000 for lighting rebates from XL Energy by doing high energy efficient lighting that they have programs for. So I would say this will be complete probably towards the end of the summer. We have a sign that's going up on Terry Avenue. That's part of the project that's already in the contract, and that will be happening here in the next couple of weeks. And then we can get this one off the docket. Ben Rifle Middle School, this is complete with punch list and warranty items remaining. We have some drainage issues on the north side that we're working through that the engineers are taking care of for us. This project is approximately $3.3 million under budget, and that includes about, I think we rolled in about $3 million to take care of all the inflation that's in the whole plan under this project. It includes $380,000 for Faith Avenue from the church and $36,600 from XL Energy for lighting rebates. So sitting really well on that one as well. Memorial, the music area, that was completed in 2019. That was under budget by about $303,000. Robert Frost, that front entrance addition and the gym addition, ADA things, that was completed in 2020. That was about $64,000 under budget. You'll see a pattern here, so as you come, it won't be as rosy as we go. But that's typically when you have a long-term project that you're trying to estimate, you don't know what the dynamics of inflation is going to do. But overall, I think we're still in pretty good shape. So that Robert Frost, that's complete. Laura Wilder, this one is also complete. That would be that elevator and playground entrance and stairwell to improve circulation, renovated restrooms throughout the building. That was slightly over $180,000 over our estimated budget. Whoops. Horace Mann is the next one. That was completed in 2020. That put the new entrance and security entrance on, renovated restrooms and quite a few other things. That was about $22,000 under budget. And one thing we did, we didn't do the addition for the classrooms. So that was the 2.569 was deferred for future. So that's in the overall available, and we'll talk about that in the future. So that may not ever need to take place. So we'll come to that at the end. Lincoln High School, that's basically complete. We're working with lockers this summer and warranty items. If you know, we couldn't get delivery of lockers last year, so that was delayed. They're here in town, so we just have to get scheduled to get the lockers in the varsity, men's varsity locker room installed this summer. And that budget was under budget $45,000. Cleveland Elementary, that's that new gymnasium. There's a lot of dominoes. The old gym became the multipurpose room. The old multipurpose became the music area. All new windows in the facility, new chiller, a lot of other things. Right now, they're working on the early childhood renovations, and then they'll be doing painting of the corridors and new floor covering. And they're really working diligently, and this will be done by the start of the school year. And that will include the new parking lot, new playground structures, and those sort of things. So that's still on track to be completed this fall. And that overall project is $577,000 under budget. Jane Addams, those are the two music rooms. We're basically complete. There's still punch lists and warranty items remaining. We had a meeting last week to try to solve how we're going to get those done. And I think the playground's looking good. And part of this is we purchased a couple houses on the side, and that's being demoed. And so their playground will be expanding even further. And this project's about $113,000 under budget.
And I would like to explain, so those homes, the ones we could, were moved that were salvageable.
Yes.
And CCOG has refurbished those.
Yes, we've
They could.
two of the houses one was movable, the other one was not. Well, and then the one they're tearing down was not
Habitable.
anywhere close. That had a big hole in the wall, and it was half collapsed. So it was okay to have that one leave the neighborhood. Instructional Planning Center, there's still a few punch lists yet to remain. This basically is done. We're about $10,000 over budget on this one. That's a security out front here in the exterior storage. Now we're going to enter into some of the stuff that we're just starting. John F. Kennedy, that's a new gymnasium and associated rooms, locker rooms, storage. Convert the existing gymnasium to a multi-purpose room, kitchen, serving area, then convert that existing multi-purpose into a general music area. Kind of similar dominoes that we did at Cleveland. Not quite as much. That's a newer building, so you don't have windows and those sort of things to have to deal with. But we are going into the rooms and putting permanent walls in the classrooms and updating ceilings and marker boards in that. And we'll also update intercom and clock systems throughout. That now is, you're seeing some of the new inflationary things that we're hitting. And that project is about $742,000 over budget. The next two are Roosevelt and Washington. Pretty much all the components will be the same, so I'll just talk about the components on one, and then I'll give you the over and under at that. But this is, we'll provide additional multi-purpose gym storage, add PE coach's office, and expanded training rooms, expand the fitness weight room similar to Lincoln and Jefferson, and provide an exterior restroom for security. That'll be a restroom that for when we have football and those sort of things that we can lock the rest of the school off and that can be opened. And we'll provide storage space for football, soccer, tennis, depending on which site you're going to be at. And this project will also replace gymnasium bleachers to meet code, refinish gymnasium floors. We're also realigning the floor layouts to make it more user-friendly and what the coaches want. At Roosevelt, we're updating the intercom and clock system. That's already been done at Washington, so that's not part of this project. And we'll be updating the north asphalt areas and parking spaces in the back where that tank was, and that was removed several years ago, and adding a few more parking spaces there. And also be doing some corridor floor tile in the D wing and E area, and updating the perimeter lighting on the building with LED. So we'll be getting some lighting rebates on these two projects as well. Roosevelt's budget was approximately $1 million over budget, and Washington has pretty much all the same components of that, and they're about $798,000 over budget. Okay, then moving on to this is one that we added after our last summary, athletic turf and lighting projects at Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Washington, to bring them up to what Jefferson is. And this project will reconstruct the existing main fields at each school, and by installing synthetic turf systems, and then actually adding field lighting to each side on the main fields. We also plan on putting data to the field house from the main building so they can do cameras and have communications out there in the field house. Estimated project, if you've gone by Lincoln, they're under construction now. That's scheduled to be completed fall of 2022. Lighting will be a little bit later, probably in October of 22. And Roosevelt and Washington will follow up next year on the fall of 2023. Now, there's been some discussion on some high jump pads at Lincoln because we took those out to get the soccer and there was really no room. Met with Joey, and I think we can probably do that, and I've kind of booked that dollars into that number to be able to put two more long jump pads for them and still get it in without touching those practice fields. So we're working on that as we speak. And right now those three projects are about $75,000 under budget. So that was good news. So now moving on to the overall CIP plan as we see it today. Total CIP bond, right now we've at about $158,225,000. And other capital that we've incorporated into the project is about a little over 11 million. So total projects budgeted is 169,278, 169 million. So then when you look at, that's the budgeted, final bids and estimated costs to date is 164,488. So budget to actual, we're still about 4,789,961 under budget. And that includes that 2.5 of Horace Manns. So we have about 84.16 bond of the bond fund spoken for or bid, and we're about 2.83 under budget. Okay, future approved CIP projects. The Central Services Center, Hayward Elementary, then Northwest Elementary, and then the delayed portion of Horace Mann, which we'll talk about later. And then I put in that learning lab, and that's in the current, half of it's in this current coming up capital outlay, and the next half would be there, and we could start with that, and we'll discuss that in a little more detail. Okay, Central Services. This project constructs a new vehicle storage equipment area to house existing equipment. And some of that is a domino with the purchasing part, and because some of that existing will disappear. with that, the expansion with that. Changes from the original CIP is we moved early childhood screening and eval out to the learning lab. So that leaves space there. And this would eliminate the need to construct the north training room addition. So we're able to get some efficiencies there, but we'll renovate the old early childhood area, the existing footprint for operational services. Then we'll renovate the existing operational services IT area into all IT information. And we're quite a ways along with the development. Our plan is to bid this in August and be under construction this fall. And then there'll be a dominoes, and overall would be fall of 2023, I think, will be completed. So,
Are you seeing with the peak of what inflation costs in the construction, you feel, or how?
I don't know if we've peaked out yet, but we're starting to feel a little bit like we can get some products now. The steel, we can start seeing some steel. Precast is still 6 months to a year out. So there's still some dynamics that we gotta be real careful when we put schedules together, like that new elementary, that we're not gonna be able to build it in that 14 months we used to be able to. You might wanna think about a 2-year building cycle just to make sure that we have product available. So there's some other things that we're gonna do in the capital side with this project is we're gonna repair some damaged metal wall panels. We're gonna reconstruct the front entrances so it's better security. And then we're gonna update the network air conditioning area. That's about 25 years old, so it's at its last leg. And we're gonna actually put security fencing around that back storage area and enclose that. We've had several things disappear, and we've even had some trucks with catalytic converters cut off at night. And so we're gonna try to get a little more security out there. And we're gonna update the parking lot lighting, since there is no parking lot lighting, that we share with the city for the Premier Center. So that estimated cost is about 3.7. And that kind of parallels, I just kept the addition that we took off in there, so hopefully that'll cover that inflationary increase on that. Okay, Hayward Elementary. This one, this is probably delayed a year from what we originally had, but it's constructing new locker rooms and storage areas. We're trying to take the locker rooms and make additional storage into the multi-purpose area. We're gonna also construct permanent walls like we're doing at JFK. We're gonna level the floor in one of the pit areas, update the fire alarm, intercom, and clock systems. Another one that came in this last fall is corner sink units and the original pods, and update exterior lighting, and add hand dryers in some of the student restrooms. So we kind of delayed this because there's some discussions with what's going to happen with community centers and how that can all intertwine with this project. And so we don't do something that we may not need. So we're going to make sure we're efficient with how we plan it. So this estimated cost is about $2.1 million. Then Northwest Elementary, estimated completion is 2025, about an 84,000 square foot elementary school for about 680 kids. Includes AE construction, site work, street construction, and then if we move to a different site, we'd have to include land. We didn't have land in the original budgets because it was always going to go to by McGovern. The assessment and zoning would have to be part of this, furnishing equipment, library books. And the first estimate was based on a modified plan reuse of Susan B. Sotomayor. You don't have to have it look anywhere close to that. It just uses it as a baseline. And that'll be a discussion we'll have to have down in the future. Right now we have almost $22 million allocated for this. And if we delay or change the sites, those will all come into play might have to modify that estimate.
So before you leave that, between you and Mr. Beek, can you just reiterate to the board and the community kind of the timeline in alignment with the bond, with the decision-making, and then how that kind of looks now next to the timeline of construction? So we end up still landing at the right spot.
Well, if we're going to, it's really the completion date that's going to drive that factor. If the completion date is 25 or remains there, we're going to have to make a decision this end of summer, this fall, of moving forward. Because we'll probably want to be under construction, spring of this next year. So those are kind of the thought process. Now, the other site, there's going to be some issues, and we'll talk about that when we look at the site locations and where that is and what the city's telling us as far as getting utilities to that spot. So I think the growth is going to decide a little bit, when we present that. And the use of Susan being of a plan reuse, we can get to the bidding process much faster if we do that, and also save about $400,000 as well. So those are the things that we'll have to.
We discussed some potential sites later, so I think maybe when we get to there, we as a board can kind of start saying, as a game plan, how we will include the public in what decision making and going forward on that. So.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, Horseman, I think we've talked about this, is 6 classrooms, restrooms, meeting rooms. And the need for this, we'll keep evaluating this, but at this time, I don't think we've seen any pressing needs that this would have to go forward. Okay, Learning Lab, early child classrooms. We put in half of this in this current capital outlay budget, but there's 3 science rooms over in the Learning Lab they're not being used. And this would get us some space available and open up some space at Hayward that could be used for classrooms. And we could move their early childhood over to this spot. And it'd be a good fit because it's their early childhood screening and eval location as well. So right across the hall, and there's admin there, there's office there. And this would renovate those 3 rooms, and then we would also install a play structure playground area to the north. There's a nice grass area between the 2 sidewalks that go up there that could be utilized for that.
I can't remember the number that Todd looked up last time, but with our early childhood, is it 85 or 90% or bust, regardless, for early childhood? I remember a while ago when I looked at that number. I can't remember what that was, but moving them, we're busing so that it won't be a problem like they're walking to school.
Right, and the proximity of Hayward to this location is nice and close, so not a significant increase in bus time and those things.
You'll have I've kind of already started working on this a little bit, and I've met with Sue out there and walked through those sites and looked at the preliminary layout, and I think she's excited, but you'll have another opportunity when we do a public hearing and those sort of things before we move forward with this. Okay, then land potential uses, new elementary site options. We have the northwest by George McGovern, then a potential and I have some maps of these, so we'll just kind of briefly go over that. Obtain potential school park site between 26th and 22nd west of the Ellis Road. That'd be in that Lennox land we obtained. Lincoln L site options. We're currently working on an appraisal to see what that property is worth. And then we have kind of 3 options: retain for future projects for the district, work with the city on potential housing, and dispose of the property to potential organizations, or do an RFP. We won't know where that lands once we go down that path. But this has created a lot of community discussions over the last couple months. Instructional Planning Center, IPC, lot south of IPC, construct a new facility to house community campus. The program, this would consolidate the programs housed at Western Mall and Axtell Park into one facility. We've got about a 3-year window to make this happen if we're going to do it, because that's when our next lease runs out. Then the Whittier site for replacement of the Whittier We currently own eight lots of the 41, and I've got a map of that. Then Axtell Park track and football field, that want to keep that for the Lincoln High School. They use that every fall. And it's actually amazing how much they use it even for Axtell Park. I see them, their PE program working there, so. Okay, Northwest Elementary site. We've had some meetings with the developer, and the next slide will show you that, but this site is directly southeast of George McGovern. You can kind of see where Jefferson is onto the far right and see how that lays. So the next slide will give you an idea what that development is going to look like. They want to actually get started on some of this work this fall yet, this late summer and fall. And you can kind of see where that future elementary site and the park site, and we would construct with the city that LU loop around our portion with the property share. I mean, there's going to be cost sharing involved in this whole thing. So right now, there's been discussion about if the city puts it out for bids and then we do our cost share like we did at Rosa Parks, you know, and everybody pays their fair share.
And for the public, we currently own that square showed future elementary,
Yes.
and the city owns that future park site.
Yes,
Correct.
that is correct. And we could, even if this development didn't happen, the sewer is at that fire station up on that, right by the football field, and that depth is enough to service our elementary site. So that could be done anytime, and it's there. So utilities are not a problem. Okay, the new West Side Elementary site, potential site would be almost straight west of Discovery, about 1.5 miles. It's kind of that typical. And we've looked at the site, the potential site with the city, and they're on board to be a school park site with that. So that's kind of the location. Planning has really recommended us to be on 22nd, which makes sense. It's a little less, it'll be less busy than the 26th Street. 26th Street could be a little busier. And I think that's where we need to be. And potential community campus site at IPC would be directly south, that field that really doesn't get utilized much. And we haven't started programming or anything of what needs to be in there if it did come over here. But the vision would be is that, see that waterway between, we had actually put that under the parking lot and build over the top of it. And then there'd be a parking shared with IPC in that facility. And then however you do the drop-offs and whatnot. But the bus drops off here. It could be a very nice site for them as well. Okay, then this is the Whittier. You can see the colored areas. The green colored areas are where we purchase houses, and the houses are no longer there. The one was moved off. That we bought that from the city on affordable housing, and they moved that to a different site, knowing that we were coming here before they even opened it or completed it. And so that's why that was green. And the other one, that house was not habitable. So we took that down. But the blue, the 4 and the 5 in the blue are being rented right now. And that's our goal, is if they're rentable, we're renting them until such time we need them. So we got a ways to go over there. Okay, possible future work session topics. This would be elementary enrollment projections, you know, to finalize that elementary site. Now, one thing I need to say is that potential one off 22nd Street, that utilities might not be there till 26, 27. So that will play a factor in our discussion. Then determine the architectural approach, if we do a plan reuse or we design new, then the timeline of construction, and then look at how we're going to do elementary boundaries, setting that process, and how to do the transition plan for students that will be impacted. for that thing. There'll be a domino on that west side.
No, and this all makes sense because, you know, we need to obviously see, is there the need to do this? And if there is the need, then what the next steps?
Yep.
for that. So this makes
So with that, just any questions? And I made it through without my voice cracking.
And I just want to make the public aware, this is just kind of like, hey, this is where we are. We're no further, we're inviting the public when we start doing this. So
Yep.
we will be scheduling, looking at this time frame, looking at enrollment first to see if we need to go to step 2, which we then do choose a site and so forth and so forth. So that's what we'll keep the public informed and up to date as we're doing steps.
I think
include them in the process.
we're in pretty good shape, but we still have a little contingency there that if that elementary does come in higher because of what we're seeing, and we're seeing 20% in some of that.
Yeah.
That would put about 20% on that number that we have. But I ran some numbers and it doesn't look like that's going to project based on what some of our numbers have been. So I'm confident that we're going to still be under.
Yeah, so it's the process, and I know we're going to kind of fill in, you know, over the next couple of months, what you want to do for a schedule for work sessions and board meeting reports. One of the things we want to continue to do is consistently reporting on our district priorities, but because some of those now are well in motion, I think we'll have time to devote to kind of going back to some of these special projects. And so we'll just need to start putting those down so that then people can see that coming. So if we get an idea, if these are kind of what we think we're going to want to start with, we'll just start plugging those in from this. And then we can always adjust that, but then you can review that in August when you have kind of your extended retreat time to look at your planning for the year, if that's okay with you.
No, I think that'd be great. Plug those in.
Okay. It's going to be here before we know it. When I see that 2025 date, it seems like
Comes
a long
fast.
ways off, and we know how
Yep.
fast that goes after opening 2 buildings this year. It's exciting. It's fun to think about kind of finishing off that bond, what it was intended to do, and who knew what we were going to have in the middle of that. But, you know, that's good to look ahead now and see what's coming.
Any questions on any of the projects or any?
No. We like to see obviously the under budget, but we realize what's going on nationally with both supply as well as inflation. We were lucky. We did the 2 big schools and bid all those prior to COVID.
We hit those other 2 just perfectly. So actually it was easier to build in COVID than it has been lately. So we just have to, I mean, it's hard to give them schedules and we're just trying to manage that we don't get ahead of ourselves and create something that we can't live with. So,
Appreciate the update, Jeff.
thank you.
If any board members at some point, we've talked about this just lightly, but if you want to see any of those spaces have been renovated, if you haven't had a chance to see those, we can always schedule that. It's just kind of fun to see the new version of it. And
Maybe we could do a Southeast Tech meeting and our work session out at the learning, do like our board meeting one time
Yeah.
out there like we did last year.
yeah, that'd be good. Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Anything else? Seeing none, any public input on district priorities or the review of 2022-23 planning? Morgan? Thank you. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion, do you have a second? Second. I have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned until 5:30 14.